one of the reasons that we are so delighted to be doing these online seminars is that it fits so clearly with our purpose as a business school. We're all about developing powerful ideas, evidence-based ideas, to develop purpose-driven leaders, sharing our ideas to help you become even a more purpose-driven leader, to have positive impact. Not just positive impact on yourself and your team and your organization, but on all of your stakeholders and on your community and on the world at large. We do truly believe in the power of business to make an incredible difference in the world. A few facts about Ross that we want you to know, but we're not going to go through all of those. We just want you to know that when you're interacting with us, you're interacting with one of the top business schools in the world, and a business school that really cares about you and your organization. One of the things that our dean mentioned in an email to all of us a couple of weeks ago was, it was a long email with a lot of stuff in it, but this one sentence really stood out to me, and I think it's important for us all to remember. We are preparing for a new world, not the end of the world. So it's time to not panic, but instead to figure out how are we going to be successful in this new world. And that is a lot of what we're going to talk about today with Professor Dave Ulrich. Not only how you deal with the crisis, but how do you find opportunity in that crisis. Michigan Ross Executive Education does our programs around the world when we're doing face-to-face programs, and we're doing them around the world as we join with you wherever you are. We want you to know that once we're back to face-to-face kinds of learning, we have those programs as well as online programs. And we love to host you on our campus. We also love to come to you and deliver the programs wherever you are and help you develop the talent in your organization. Our programs are open enrollment, where you can join with managers and leaders from many different companies, and there's a lot of cross-fertilization type learning there. Or we can work with you as an organization to develop a program that's specifically targeted to your needs. So we hope that at some point you'll contact us to talk about what you want to do with your organization. And now I am so delighted to introduce to you our faculty expert for the day, and someone I consider a friend, Dave Ulrich. Dave is the Rensis Likert Collegiate Professor of Business Administration here, and while we're doing some polls later and we're waiting, I'm going to share with you a bit of trivia about this chair name, the Rensis Likert chair. But right now, I just want to tell you that Dave is ranked as the #1 management guru by Business Week. He's been profiled by Fast Company as one of the world's top creative people in business, a top coach in Forbes. He is regularly on the Thinkers 50 list, and many of you, if you're in the field of HR or any leadership role, will be familiar with some of the books that Dave has written and the articles and so on. He has been a superstar in both the academic realm and in the so-called real world of corporate and business and the organizational world. Recently, he was named a distinguished fellow in the National Academy of Human Resources. That is really an honor. And another honor that that was bestowed on Dave recently is something we jokingly call the DUI Award. It's the Dave Ulrich Impact Award that was announced recently by the Academy of Management. So every year, some stellar researcher, leader who is making an impact receives the DUI Award, the Dave Ulrich Impact Award. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dave. He is going to now share his screen and walk us through some great ideas for discovering opportunity in crisis.
You know, let me share my screen, and thank you for that incredible introduction. I have a great regret that I did not get my 92-year-old mother on the phone to hear that introduction, and my children who don't think any of those things about me. So I'm sorry. I'm going to move my slides back up. They got lost. Melanie, thank you. I am just honored to be here, and good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you are. I noticed as people were giving their locations in the chat room, we have people from everywhere in the world. That's the scope and the expanse of the Ross Business School. What a privilege to be a part of that school since 1982, probably before most of you were born. And welcome to my office. I've never invited Ross students into my office. Welcome to my office. I hope you appreciate it and that we can have a conversation. I found out that Ross's, and many of you, most of you are related to Ross, and Hail to the Victor is the Michigan fight song. I'm going to start with trivia. Most of you probably didn't realize that the original Michigan fight song was, "It's going to be a hot time in the old town tonight." And so just realize that that's the legacy of Michigan, is a hot time in the old town tonight. Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to get into our discussion. Let me begin with the end in mind. Everybody wants to have a copy and a link and to the slides, and you'll get that as we follow up, and I hope some of you may follow me on LinkedIn. I have a passion to accomplish those three purposes of the business school: to have powerful ideas, purpose, and a positive impact. And I think sometimes in this crisis that we're all living in, we forget a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. I love that line. I have a deep and abiding affection for Dr. Martin Luther King. You see actually his picture in my office for the last 30 years. As I grew up, he was one of my mentor icons. He talks about the crisis being a thing to waste. Winston Churchill from the obviously United Kingdom. Albert Einstein looks at opportunity in crisis. And then I love the last one on the bottom left. The Women's Tea Time Group also looks at a crisis. So we're in a crisis, and we know that. We've been in a crisis for a few weeks, and we'll be in other crises. It's a terrible thing to waste. This corona crisis is affecting all of us, and it affects us all in very different ways that I'll talk about. It's real. I've had to learn new terms, and I started to think in the last 7 or 8 weeks, I had never thought about quarantine at home or drive-through telemed or coronavirus test or global pandemic or sheltering in place or essential businesses or lockdown. I'm just overwhelmed. And in fact, I shouldn't confess this, quit watching television because I'm almost tired of all this ongoing crisis that's affecting us. Now, let me tell you the concept that's going to drive our discussion today. And I'm going to do a couple of polling questions, so I hope you're ready with that. Content is king. The content of what we do as business leaders, especially if you've been well-trained at Ross, but the context is the kingdom. The context defines where and how the king or the queen operates. If we don't understand the context, we're not going to be successful. So the content is critical. Come to Ross to get powerful ideas, purpose, positive impact. We will guarantee you good content. You, as a Ross alum, singing Hot Town in the Old Town Tonight, your job is to understand your context so that you can apply your content. And so the question we're going to address today is, how do we respond to the corona or some other virus or crisis, and there will be others, as individuals, as leaders, and as organizations? That's the question we're going to address for the next 30 minutes. Two pathways. One is threat. There's in the back of your brain, the neurologists teach us what's called the limbic system. When you're under threat, you focus on the weakness. You focus on what's wrong. And in this crisis, there are many individuals who are having the emotions of fear, anxiety, hopelessness. Just they're scared. By the way, I'm going to stop. I'm going to confess, I think all of us face that sometime. I faced it yesterday as I was frustrated about something not doing and going as well as I'd hoped. And we face that. We're under stress. Our organizations face conditions in this threat stage of psychological risk, low morale. We're in a strategic haze. We don't know where to go. We're cultural malaise, brand ambiguity. And it looks like you should join the session next week for brand as we have another Ross session. And our leadership actions are sometimes disoriented, agitated, leaders acting out of desperation or frustration. What I want to do is turn that limbic system in the back of your minds to the frontal lobes. Let's focus for the next 30 minutes on opportunity. What are our strengths? What's right? What's good? For individuals, how do we manage those emotions of hope, How do we manage those abilities of control and anticipation? And at Michigan, the Ross School, the positive psychology group here has done such an incredible job with that. How do we find opportunity in the organizational conditions of emotional well-being, strategic focus, the right culture, and how do we get the right leadership actions to give guidance and to get things done? I'm going to focus on the right, positive impact, power of ideas. Now, where does that come from? I really like the first theme that Melanie reinforced. We believe in powerful ideas based on thoughtful and rigorous theory, research, and experience. We have been involved at Ross since 1982 in research on talent, leadership, organization, and HR. Talent. We've done studies with 450 companies on 13 dimensions of talent. We've written best-selling books and hundreds of interventions. We know how to do talent. Leadership brand. We have studied the Fortune magazine. We were the architect of their top companies for leadership work, where we did 3 rounds with 500 companies of what leadership requires to be successful. We've done a work and research on leadership code with 30,000 participants, on leadership brand with hundreds of organizations, on leadership capital index with literally 450 investors doing it, and a half dozen books defining leadership. To the top right, we have assessed and defined organizational capabilities with data from 1,200 organizations and deep interventions, with 10 books on redefining organizational logic. And in human resources, we have looked at 30 years over 7 rounds sponsored by the University of Michigan, co-sponsored with over 120,000 data points. The HR impact on stakeholders. Take a breath. All of that knowledge comes together to discover opportunities. And let me say, it also comes together in the experience of the classroom at the Ross School. I have had the privilege of teaching in the Advanced HR Executive Program since 1983. And we continue to do research. But as I go through these opportunities, I want you to recognize they're not just somebody sitting in their office thinking. They're based on solid and grounded theory, research, and experience. With that in mind, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. I'm going to suggest 10 opportunities. These 10 opportunities are 4 assumptions and 6 actions that we can take. And I'll go through those in just a minute. We're going to go through all of them. Here's my assumption at the beginning. Who's responsible to respond in this crisis? Obviously, everybody is, and I think we have to have agency. We have to act rather than be acted upon. We cannot let that external crisis determine how we think and how we feel and what we do. And that personal agency is going to be driven by today's menu. And so here's the metaphor for the rest of our session today. Restaurants, at least in the United States and perhaps around the world, are closed. I am going to be your waiter and your chef and your cook. I'm going to give you a menu of opportunities and insights. I have in my appetizer list 4 assumptions. How do we think that will give us opportunities in this crisis? And I have 4 assumptions. And on the other side are the main course, and then the final one is the after dinner or is the dessert. I'm going to provide 6 actions about what we can do in this crisis. And the final dessert is obviously at the end to take care of yourself. As we do this discussion, I hope you will recognize that you as an individual are the agent to pick the idea that will work with these 10 insights for you, for the individual, and for those you work with, for you as a leader, or for the leaders in your organization and for your organization. So that ultimately, and I'll go back real quick, ultimately what we want to do is find opportunity for individuals to have hope, control, anticipation, for organizations to have emotional well-being, strategic focus, and leadership. These 10 insights should apply to all 3 of those. With that in mind, let's get going. And we're gonna take probably 25 minutes and go through these 10 ideas, and we'll do a couple of polls. Opportunity 1, learn always. Carol Dweck, one of the great thinkers in our field at Stanford University, did a book called Mindset. And in that book, she had a line, "We're not failing, we're learning." I actually should have shown it. I had that embroidered for my wife, Wendy, as a pillow on her couch. The story on the left captures it. Jonas Salk, the inventor of the polio vaccine, don't we wish he was alive today to do the coronavirus vaccine, told a story about what made me a great inventor. He said, I came home from school as a young boy, probably age 10 or 12. I had a glass of milk. Here's my glass. I moved it closer to the edge of the table. I moved it closer. My mother said, Jonas, don't do that. Jonas, don't do that. Finally, off the table it fell, and the glass broke and the milk spilled. By the way, for those of us who are parents or grandparents, we know that response. But here's what Jonas said. Jonas Salk said, my mother looked at me and said, Jonas, what did you just learn? We're not failing, we're learning. Thomas Edison, I failed 1,000 ways that won't work to create electricity. One of the opportunities in this crisis is to create learning agility, and here's the tool. Every one of us could raise our hands and say, I've had a failure in my life, an opportunity that didn't work, a relationship that didn't work, something I experimented with that didn't work physically, emotionally, socially. I won't ask you to share. I was tempted at this point to have Melanie, my boss at the Ross Business School, get back on the phone and say, Melanie, share your greatest failure, but that would be a very bad judgment, and I won't share mine. But I'd like you to think with me for just 5 seconds or 10. How did I feel at the time? How did I feel at the time? For me, I've had things that haven't worked, little things, big things. I felt despondent. I felt despair. I felt hopeless. All of those threats. Now, what did I learn? What did I learn? For me, one of the things I learned is I'm in charge of my own career. I get to set my own agenda. I'm an agent unto myself. I know what I want to do in my career and in my life. How critical has that learning been to shape your life? My experience and the experience of many people through our research and others is often in the moments of greatest despair, we realize the skills that will create the greatest hope. Use this crisis to learn. Opportunity 2, look back to be resilient. Look back. What did I do? What worked? What didn't? Experiment, try stuff. In our field and organizations today, we have a lot of words around resilience and grit and after action review. I love looking back, but I also think it's critical to look forward. Looking back lets us be resilient, to have grit, to learn, to have a growth mindset. Looking forward defines our pathway to success. A few years ago, I had the privilege of being the commencement speaker at the Ross School. What a privilege. And I was so torn because I don't have an incredible life story. I grew up with good parents. I had a good success in life. And I've had, I haven't had Stephen Jobs or Oprah Winfrey's life story, and I'm not them in any way, but I coach. And so what I did in that session is what I'll give with you quickly. What do I want? Do I know what I want based on my strengths and my passions so that I can look forward to my success? Clayton Christensen, a great colleague who recently passed away, just did a book, How Do I Measure My Life? What do I want is about me. Use my passions, my skills. 2, whom do I serve? Am I helping other people? Am I having a positive impact? 3, how do I build? Am I building and working in organizations and institutions that will outlive me? And the 4th question I didn't use at that graduation session, where am I on this journey? I encourage you to find an opportunity not only to look back, but to move forward, to create your success by knowing what you want, who you serve, how you build, and where you are. The story for me is powerful. 4 or 5 years ago, I'm in the basement with a colleague named Gary Hamill, a brilliant scholar who Ross graduate as well, with C.K. Prahalad, who is one of my mentors. My wife runs downstairs, says, Dave, Gary, the hill's on fire. This is outside our house. We walk up, that's me as a younger person at night. And this still touches me today. My father was a forest ranger, and I love the trees. I love the mountains. And in this moment of despair, I remember sitting on the curb with one of our neighbors, an older man then, and I was old, but not as old, in his late 70s. Boy, I bring back some memory. Bill was sitting there crying, and we sat on the curb, and I said, Bill, what's up? He said, Dave, the mountains are my life, and those trees that are exploding with fire define the future. And we felt despair. 6 months later, I went for a walk. And out of the ashes, out of that darkness, out of those burned trees, Wendy and I took a picture. The emotional sprout is coming. Look backwards to learn, but look forward. See those sprouts in your lives as opportunities. Opportunity 3, and I need to keep moving for time, redefine work boundaries. Let me describe that with a story I think many of you have probably heard and probably seen. The story is a really interesting one, and it's told by many people. There's a bricklayer, and the question is, are you laying bricks? That's what he says I'm doing. Are you building a wall, or are you creating a cathedral? One of the things I think we've learned in this crisis as a mental model is that we've got to redefine what work we do. For example, working at home, and I know you're going to have a virtual webinar through Michigan on it, and I encourage you to attend. When that happened 6 or 7 weeks ago, everybody was saying, oh, go home at work, get a nice place to do it, find your glasses, comb your hair, do your shaving or your makeup, look good. That is not the new way to think about this crisis. I think traditionally we have boundaries of work. I go to work, I'm at work, and I go home from work. I think we've got to redefine that boundary. Work is not a place. Work is a set of values. And here's the key to what work looks like. It's the values of what we do to create value for our customer. And so I think we have to leave this crisis with the opportunity to say, I don't care where you work. It can be at home, welcome to my office. It can be in a hotel. It can be in an airport. It can be in an airplane. It can be in an office space. Where we work doesn't matter as much as how we work, and or as why we work, and the values that we create. So I encourage us in this crisis to define the opportunity by defining work boundaries from place to values. Opportunity 4, navigate paradox. And if I could make sure we're ready in just a minute, not now, to do the poll. So that's a heads up if on the poll. I love the concept of paradox and navigating it, tensions, duality. Bob Quinn, a professor who's been at the University of Michigan for so long, has been so central to this with Kim Cameron at defining duality. I think it can be seen as oxymorons, and you can just glance through those: bittersweet, deafening silence, open secret, passively aggressive. But I also love the paradoxical statements. You can glance through those. Modern dancing is so old-fashioned, number 1. Number 2, from Yogi Berra, an American baseball player. No one goes to that restaurant anymore. It's always too crowded. Winston Churchill, a joke is actually an extremely serious issue. You'd be surprised how much it costs to look this cheap, from Dolly Parton and Mark Twain. In organizations today, paradox is tension and duality. Think of it as 2 guardrails. On the one guardrail, you have short-term and the other is long-term. You don't manage the paradox by doing one or the other. You have to do both. Top down, bottom up. Those are 2 guardrails. You have to navigate that tension. As they say in sailing, you can't control the wind, you just adjust your sails. If you were traveling, and this was from Detroit, Michigan, where Michigan is, and this is to your city, there's a straight line. The airplane is almost never on that straight line. In this tension-created world in the coronavirus, I see 4 critical paradoxes that we're having to navigate as individuals, as leaders, and as organizations. Care for the individual. Boy, I see a lot of people in our field talking about, this is about the employee, it's about the individual. You've got to take care of them. You've got to be their caretaker, caregiver. But you've also got to attend to the organization. You got to win. You got to compete in the marketplace. If we don't win in the marketplace, there is no workplace. You got to do both. We've got to have bold, short-term actions. We've got to have things today that make things work. We've got to act quickly and decisively. We've got to have these actions that allow us to succeed. And we've got to have long-term values. We've got to converge, focus, get direct, prune the trees, be successful. And we've got to diverge and be diverse for variety. We've got to be resilient in future. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn to Sherry to give us our first poll. And so Sherry, I don't know if you take the screen or how you do that. We're learning here as we go. But okay, there we go. Which pair of the paradoxes is the most relevant for your organization? Sherry, thank you for doing those at the last minute. Employee care and organizational competitiveness, bold short-term actions, converge, and resilience. And I think we have another. Can you see me? If somebody could let me know if they can come off mute, either Melanie, Joni, or Sherry. Just let me know if you can still see me.
Absolutely, Dave. I can
Super.
see you. I'm hoping the attendees can as well. I believe they can. Someone can put in the chat to us whether you can still see Dave or not. But
So
we as
Melanie,
panelists
during
can
this
see you.
next 20 seconds, would you like to sing Hail to the Victors?
I will not sing "Hail to the Victors." I might lead us in a song later. I will tell people a little bit though about the name of your chair. Being a chaired professor in academia is a really important thing. It's a big deal. And Dave has been honored by the University of Michigan and the Ross School of Business with a really important chair called the Rensis Likert Chair. And I wonder if anybody knows who Rensis Likert is.
I do.
Dave knows, and we know because Rensis Likert is the inventor of something you have probably all experienced, and that is answering a survey on what's called the Likert scale, that 1 to 5 scale, where 1 is the very low and 5 is the high, and then there are gradations in between. So that was invented by Rensis Likert at the University of Michigan, and he was the founder of our Institute for Social Research, a very famous research institution. So a little bit of trivia for you. Maybe it'll help you out in your Thursday night trivia sessions.
That is so cool. And by the way, let me just say with deep, deep humility, I am so honored to carry the name of the Rensis Likert Chair. The previous holder was Professor Carl Weick, a colleague whom all of us revere in this field, and what a privilege to be a part of Ross and to be a part of that experience. Look at the results with me. They're fascinating, and they spread across the board, but a lot of people are picking that employee care and organizational competitiveness bold. Here's the issue, and it's just fascinating to see what those are and to say, except convergence and divergence is not as high. But we each have paradoxes. It would be great to get the 12 people who had others and to send them to me so I can learn from you. How do I navigate, not manage, those paradoxes? And we have found in our work, and I'm not going to go through this in detail, there are 5 leadership skills that can be used to navigate paradox. You can do it individually. You can train leaders to do it. Deal with cognitive complexity. Can I disagree? No. Can I see both sides of an issue? Can I respect other people? Be socially endearing. Can I disagree without being disagreeable? It is such a privilege to work with leaders at the Ross School. We don't always agree, but we have deep respect for each other. We listen, we understand, and we feel better about ourselves after our meetings. Are we socially connected? Do I spend time with people not like me? And am I personally aware? Am I aware of my predispositions? I tend to be an introvert, but I've got to do extrovert work when I teach. Am I grounded in a set of values? I have just taken you through the first part of the menu. I'm going to just stop for a minute and see if there are any questions, and then I'm going to have to go through the last 6 very quickly. But Melanie, any questions jump out? So let's just spend a minute, and I'm not managing my time as well as I could. So
we do have some questions. So let me just throw a couple out to you, Dave. One is, what is the impact of challenging times on employee morale, stress, productivity, behavior, habits? A lot of people have been asking similar questions. And just so you know, too, next week when we're going to have Jeff Brodsky on a call. He's the CHRO at Morgan Stanley. And this is one of the things they are really thinking about, the mental health aspect of all of this. And how do we as leaders need to be preparing for, and what do we need to be doing about that? So a lot of people are asking, what is the impact of this, and how should we as leaders be thinking about it?
By the way, the impact is going to be the first item on the action list. It really depends on the individual in this situation. Here's the theory, and you'll get more of this next week. When there's high demand, and there's high demand, the coronavirus, the stresses, that does not necessarily lead to high emotional distress. On the counterbalance, if there's high resources, and the resources are the things we're talking about, learning, being resilient, looking forward, defining boundaries, paradox, and the things on the right-hand side. When the high demand is matched by high resources, employees are okay mentally and emotionally. When there's high demand and low resources, that's where the problem comes in. By the way, when there's high resources and low demand, we call that retirement, then other problems occur. By the way, what are the resources? That's a whole nother discussion. By the way, the most critical resource, and I have to say it at least 5 times because I so believe it, is attending a Ross School of Business Executive Program. That's the greatest resource you could ever find. But it's not obvious that the demand causes discouragement. This was a dissertation a number of years ago that said high demand does not cause emotional distress. That's false. High demand, when there's not high resources, causes distress.
So a really important aspect for all of us to remember is to ensure that people have the resources they need in order to fulfill the demands of the job. And sometimes we don't know the resources individuals may need, and it's probably a good strategy to ask them, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
right.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I could go through a whole session on what are the resources that we've got, and we may do that another session because it's such an important idea. And I love the question. I was waking up, I post on LinkedIn every week, and I have to post on Tuesday, and I was thinking, what am I going to write? And that may be the one I focus on. What are the resources for emotional well-being that we're all wrestling with?
That would be great. Yeah, thank you. We'll look forward to that. Okay, here's another question, Dave. How do you think these challenging times will impact employment models?
You know, one of the lessons I'm going to suggest is, and it's number 8, we have to learn to tolerate or harness uncertainty. And I get a little frustrated when talking heads like me and others come on and say, let me tell you what the new normal will be. I'm not exactly sure. What will employment look like? Here's what I think. Employment used to be, and I said it before, a physical place. At work, go to work, I'm home from work. I think employment is not the place, it's the values we create, which disaggregates where we can work and how we can work. We've already seen an incredible increase in people working full-time, part-time, on contract, with AI and technology, without AI. I think what we're going to see is a whole plethora, a whole range of ways of working that will continue to emerge. This crisis may further that, but that pathway is already underway.
All right, excellent. Dave, I think I'm going to let you get back to your presentation. You can stop a little bit later for some more questions. And just a quick time check, we're at 9:41.
I got it, and
Eastern
we'll
time.
be done by 9. We'll be done on the hour, wherever you are, half hour some places. I've done 4 assumptions, 5 actions. What can we do? I'll go quickly. Customize and personalize. Let me just highlight that and let you know that during this coronavirus, we've all lived in different ways. Here's my children. We have our children. We have 3 children, each of whom has children. Wendy and I are obviously older. We live in a home. This virus has affected us so differently than our children. Go back to work. Personalize for the employee, the red employee. Help him or her know what's needed. Customize. Opportunity 6. Distance socially, but don't isolate. And Sherry, I'm going to skip this poll for sake of time. Build relationships. Here's the question I was going to ask by poll. What's the leading cause of mortality? High blood pressure, high cholesterol, social isolation, obesity, or drinking and smoking? You know, it's an interesting poll. The research says number 3. And the reference down to the bottom, and as Melanie said, we believe at the Ross, the power of empirically based research. Social isolation. What becomes so critical in this crisis is to not isolate ourselves. Loneliness is so dangerous. The metaphor I love is the long spoons metaphor. I couldn't find the author. I think it's C.S. Lewis for me, a great author, a Christian author. He wrote about going to heaven or going to hell. And it's the same experience in some ways. You have a dinner. In hell, your hand is tied to a long pole, so you can't feed yourself. In heaven, you feed each other. You know, that's the metaphor. Bowling Alone, the book by Robert Putnam. How do we find ways to build and befriend each other? There are skills to do that. Making and receiving bids, being curious. Yesterday, I haven't talked to Melanie for a while. It was so nice to reconnect with my boss, my peer, and my friend, and to find out what she's doing and how she's doing, and to celebrate some of the good news in her life. Serve somebody, do something fun, befriend people. About 7 weeks ago in the United States, when this crisis hit, we were expected to stay home and to maintain social distance. In our neighborhood, Wendy and I thought, oh, this is hard to do because we have such good friends. So we went, and in America, this happened perhaps more than other countries. The critical issue was toilet paper. For some reason, it was sold out everywhere. So Wendy and I went and bought 15 paper bags that you take school lunch to. We put in each bag a roll of toilet paper. And we put in a complete roll, not a half roll. And we put in a bottle of water and a piece of fruit. We knocked on 15 doors. We stayed social distance. They opened the door. We sang to them badly. We wish you a happy Sunday. It was on Sunday. We wish you a happy Sunday. We wish you a happy Sunday. And here's our gift to you. That was fun. We were serving someone. We were having a spirit of engagement, even at a distance. What was really funny is a couple of days later, one of the people we took it to had the inside roll of toilet paper and brought it back in a paper bag and said, thank you. Have fun. Befriend. Opportunity 7. Live your values. Create the right culture. I love this slide. It's obviously from America, obviously not Ross alumni, taking an escalator to the fitness center. In this crisis, we have the chance not just to create a culture, but the right culture. And the right culture becomes so critical because it's not just, do you have a culture? The right culture is not an event or a pattern, it's an identity. And so the discussion you'll have next week around brand and identity outside determines the right culture inside. Let me give you a picture of how to do that we teach in our programs. Again, we hope you'll attend our programs for HR and business leaders. The right culture starts with the purpose, the mission, the vision, our reason for being. You have values and beliefs. That's the roots of the tree. That's traditionally where the culture is seen. I want to go to the right-hand side and start by saying, these are the leaves and the fruits of the tree. What do we want to be known for in the marketplace that resonates with customers and other stakeholders? The culture is that integration. In our work, we want to create the right culture, not just a set of values that describes what we do, but a brand that predicts what we do. Again, a quick story, and I'm going to leave 5 minutes for questions, but a few years ago when our son, I have a picture of our kids and it's fun to see them. That's our son and his good wife, Michael, who's in this field, finished his PhD. We said, Michael, what would you like for graduation? And he said, I want to take our kids, he had 4 children, to Disney. As soon as he said he wanted to go to Disney, our daughter wanted to go to Disney with her kids. Our other daughter wanted to go to Disney. So 16 of us showed up at Disney in Florida. Now, to have the full Disney experience, you have to stay on property in many rooms because there were 4 families. Well, what I discovered is staying on property in 3 days at Disney is expensive, extremely expensive. And as a father, I got to pay. And on property, the big difference is the soap in the rooms had Disney ears. And so I told Michael I could carve the Disney ears in the soap. And he said, Dad, you don't understand. We want the experience. So we show up, hot, humid, I perspire, I'm large, 16 of us, 2 in diapers. And the woman comes up being well hired and well trained by Disney and says, welcome to Disney. What a beautiful family. This is the happiest place on earth. And I looked at her and I said, not for me. I'm the grandfather. I'm paying for this. I'm sweaty. I'm tired. And I was grumpy. We go through the day. During that day, we go into a separate room because of the number of us. And out walks Cinderella and Snow White. And I'm still kind of grumpy, and our granddaughters, who are 7 and 8 and 6 and 7 from the 3 families, they're mesmerized, and they stare. And then one of them turns around and says, Grandpa, she's real. Grandpa, she's beautiful. And then those 3 beautiful granddaughters turned around and said, Grandpa, we love you. And I thought, crap. I should have thought, that's great, because I thought we're going to have to do this again and again and again. Because look at now, that's a true story, but look at the principle. Disney built a brand identity. They focused on the leaves. Cinderella, Snow White, because of all their HR and other practices, created an experience for our granddaughters. And they turn to their grandpa. Last year for our summer family vacation, we wanted to do a cruise. Guess what? It was a Disney cruise. They built the right culture. Opportunity 8, and I'll get through these in just a few minutes so we have questions. Focus on what we can control. It is so fascinating in this world. The feeling of outside of uncertainty is so high. Biology affects some of us. The circumstances and our response is so critical. This for me is one I struggle with, but as a leader, as an individual, as an organization, can we harness the uncertainty like a wild stallion or a horse? Can we turn that threat into opportunity, face our fears? Can we take simple steps and experiment? Can we be mindful and calm? And can we define our success from inside? Number 9, build guidance. What a critical and important issue. I love the metaphor of guidance. We have artificial intelligence, we have digital that is shaping through artificial intelligence, the analytics that shape our lives. I think that combination that we're building in the HR space, especially through our advanced HR programs, is like a career guidance counselor. Early in my career, I went to a guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor said, what are you interested in? What are your strengths? Now, what's the career pathway to get you there? We could have a retirement counselor. Where do you want to retire? What kind of income? What kind of lifestyle? What do you do to get there? In our world today, we can create for you now, and this is so powerful. And it's only at Ross and through the work we've done in our consulting firm at RBL with CorpU, another Ross partner. We don't want to describe what we're doing. We want to prescribe and give guidance. We don't want to see the choices we could make. We want to invest in the right choices and act quickly. We want to deliver value, not do activities. We now have created a guidance system that went live last week around talent, leadership, organization, and HR. RBL.ai will give you access to an online digital guidance system that will tell you what you can do and how to do it so that we create value. I am now on opportunity 10, and I've gone very quickly. When I have the privilege of coaching leaders, I shared some of my coaching ideas around questions. What do I want? Who do I serve? How do I build? I always end those sessions with the dessert on my menu. Are you taking care of yourself? On the right is a great movie. I always forget the name. The Bucket List. When you die and go to heaven, did you find meaning in life? And did you bring meaning to others? On the left, as we leave our work, what's my brand? What's my image, my mission, my values? As a Ross alumni, what's my brand? As a Ross professor, I'll tell you mine. I want to learn and have new ideas that have impact. That's my brand. It's been my brand, and it's what we do. I hope you have your brand and you create the brand in others. And then every night, take care of yourself. What was a happy surprise today? For me, a happy surprise yesterday was spending time on the phone with Melanie. What am I grateful for today? If you do this work, what problem came up? How did I solve it? What did I experiment? The positive psychologist, Marty Seligman, and my wife did her dissertation at the University of Michigan with the folks who founded positive psychology. If you do these things, you will have positive emotions as measured through neurology over time. I have just given you a menu of insights. I've given you 10 ideas. Some are assumptions, what we think, some are actions, what we do, that will allow us to move forward. Now, I was going to do a poll. I think, Sherry, for sake of time, we'll skip the poll and we'll turn to Melanie if there are questions. That's more important. But I hope as you look at these insights, you can pick a couple that be relevant for you, and then I'll come up and end after our questions. So, Melanie, I wanted to save at least 5 minutes, and we have 6 or 7 minutes for questions.
Perfect. We might even be able to give you 1 or 2 minutes to use the restroom before your next Zoom call, everybody. Thank you so much, Dave. And I had shared the same feeling. It was really wonderful to spend some time with you yesterday catching up. So, Dave, one of the most common questions here is around how the role of HR will evolve, will be different post-pandemic. And, people are clarifying that by saying things like, when work from home and social distancing are part of the new normal, when, everything we've learned might not be as relevant. What will be relevant from our past learnings to our new learnings? So in general, the questions are around how should we be thinking about our role as HR leaders? And if we are a leader in another part of the organization, we work with HR leaders. So how will the HR leader role be different in
I'm
post-pandemic?
going to embarrass myself again. There are folks on the line who speak French, so I'm going to say something in French, and then I'll tell you what I tried to say. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. The more things change, the more they're the same. Some of the fundamental principles of HR will not change, and let me describe them. HR is not about HR. It's about creating value for others. That won't change. We create value for others through HR, through talent, leadership, and organization. That won't change. I've been a part of the advanced HR program at Michigan for 30 years. We give you ideas that will create value in the marketplace with customers and investors and inside with employees by the latest ideas around talent, leadership, and organization. That won't change. What will change are some of the practices. And so the fundamental principles will be the same. I don't know all the practice changes that will happen. There's lots of innovation going on in HR that continues to innovate. I will make a comment back on the questions. I don't think it's going to be a new normal to do social distancing. I think that's ludicrous. We're going to have a new normal where we connect with each other. We can see each other. We can connect with each other. I think what work is going to take on not a new normal. We'll always work from home. That's not paradoxical. I think the new normal might be, this is hypothesis, an ecosystem of work. We can have people working in all kinds of places, at home, in a coffee shop, on an airplane, in an office. And out of this ecosystem, the boundaries of work are going to be our shared value of serving customers. Work is not a place. It's why we work and what we work on. So I think the activities will change. By the way, come to our advanced HR program. We change that program 20 to 25% every 18 months because we keep new stuff in there. And in fact, the administrators get frustrated. In fact, on this slide, I think the last version, Sherry, came through at 2 a.m. this morning. We constantly innovate, but the principles remain the same.
Yeah, okay, very good advice. And Dave, you do keep us scrambling with new ideas and new slides right up to the last minute every time we do a session. So another question that's come up, and I think it's something we're all struggling with is, and it's a bit of a paradox, is how do you deal with the need to give upbeat messages and keep people motivated and hopeful and inspired with what might be the ugly truth? One person even mentioned that, his boss is telling him, I only want upbeat messages to the staff, but he feels as though that's really misleading and maybe not fair. So how do you think about that and deal with that as a leader?
I love that paradox. I just had an experience where, and in this recession and crisis and the recession that is looming, bosses may have to give hard messages. Here's my test of a great leader, and it's what we try to teach in our programs. When someone leaves an interaction with you, if you're the leader, do they feel better or worse about themselves? One of the bosses I worked with, she had to let an employee go. We talked through how to do that. And that's a tough thing, and it may happen. That's the upbeat versus the sad messages. The employee who was let go, I knew, called me. And he didn't know that I'd done the coaching. And he said, Dave, I've just decided to change my career path. I'm excited about my opportunities ahead. Hallelujah. I called the person I was coaching and said, congratulations. That person left an interaction feeling better about themselves. Now, how do you do that? You share the news. You don't hide it. You don't share the character. You share the behavior. Yesterday, I had a mistake on these slides. Melanie did a good job. Dave, let's change this slide. It wasn't a criticism. It wasn't a personality trait. It was, I don't agree with this slide. Melanie's the boss, and she was so right. We changed it. Melanie, thank you for the guidance. You did that well. I didn't leave feeling bad about myself. We just fixed it, and it's done. By the way, the question, if your boss is a Pollyanna, only sharing that one guardrail of good news, go to that boss and say, you're taking a huge risk because you're creating expectations that are going to lead to cynicism and false hope. Share both. Be transparent, but be upbeat. Help the person navigate their own agenda.
That's such good advice. One of our other professors said something to me just in a conversation that stuck with me, around sharing information that's difficult to share, or maybe critical in some criticism in some ways, but critical information that isn't what people want to hear. And he just said, make sure you're always coming at it from a place of love.
Great
And
comment.
I loved that quote. And I find myself trying to think that way and operate that way as I go about my own leadership responsibilities.
Great
We'll
comment.
take one more question, Dave. The learning environment is taking a huge hit in a way, and undergoing some real live transformation, maybe unasked for, but it's happening, and we're learning as we go. Do you think there'll be more self-learning in the future? How do you think the learning environment will change, and learning models?
Again, I'm going to go back to number 8 on this list, uncertainty. I'm not exactly sure. I think sometimes in our learning and HR field, we jump on bandwagons. A few years ago, it was MOOCs, massive open online courses. Everybody jumped on board, and universities were started. You're going to get your degree from a great university like Michigan all online. We found they didn't work that well. And so I think what we're going to find is a lot of different ways to learn. By the way, the individual ultimately is accountable for themselves. You're an agent unto yourself. You act, don't be acted upon. But we're going to have a whole ecosystem of learning, self-learning, virtual learning through Michigan and CorpU, in-person learning. Some of that in-person is so critical to get. Virtual learning like this, TED Talk learning. What we encourage you, and I'm going to end my comments, our passion at Michigan is 2 things. 1, the best is always yet ahead. When we have our purpose at Michigan in the business school around purpose and positive impact and powerful ideas, we are always looking ahead to what's next. I often ask people, what was the best year of your life? And, oh, the year I was married, the year I was in college. Wrong, wrong, wrong. The best year of my life is the next year. Look ahead. Come to I hate that picture, but that's okay. Come to our courses. Come to our courses. HR is not about HR, it's about the business. And I have the privilege with Dick Beatty and Wayne Brockbank for years of curating ideas that establish us in HR to move forward. If you're a business leader, how can you operate without getting your HR person to come to this course? If you're an HR person, how can you live without experiencing what we've talked about today? I've not talked much about HR today. That may be another webinar. What I've talked about is doing things that make a difference. And our purpose and our agenda is to have an impact. And again, you can pick that up. And Melanie, I'll turn it back to you. We've taken the full time. What a privilege for me. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave. It was a really great session, and I'm sure people are leaving with actionable ideas, which is our goal on with everything we do in learning at Michigan Ross. So, people were asking questions about learning, and I think it ties back to something you said early on. It was which is about learning agility. If we ever needed learning agility, it is now. And I just want to leave us all with a paraphrase of something you said earlier, which is oftentimes in the times of greatest despair, greatest difficulty, greatest challenge is where we find the best ideas, the best inspiration for the future. And I think a lot of us are experiencing that. So my wish to you as you go forward is that you experience more and more of that. And we hope to be continue to be a catalyst in the learning journey for each of you. We hope you'll join us for more of these complimentary webinars and for some of our classes, as Dave has mentioned. Thank you, everybody. And as we like to say at Michigan, go blue.